Welcome to this special edition of the YAHOWAH blog. I am your host, Craig Winn. We live in a very dangerous world, worse than any time in human history. We're on the cusp of world war, and it is actually being caused in two different places for different reasons at the same time. We have belligerents in the United States and in the European Union that want to declare war against Russia and to escalate that war so that it doesn't just involve Ukraine, which has served as a willing proxy, but so that it includes troops and armaments from all of the NATO nations. It is certain to play out in world war with the death of millions, if not billions, if it isn't stopped. At the same time, we see anti-Semitism exploding around the world and Muslims salivating for their opportunity to exterminate Jews and eradicate Israel. It has particularly been horrific in Syria, where another failed plot by the United States, actually two of them, one to create ISIS and the Awakening program by General Petraeus, as he falsely claimed that he was arming Sunni jihadists to suppress al-Qaeda, even though he knew al-Qaeda did not and had never existed in Iraq. The true purpose was for Sunni Muslims to subdue the Shia Muslims that America had empowered through its invasion. And by arming them, they created ISIS. And over time, ISIS changed its name simply to IS, the Islamic State, and it is now ISIS again as it dominates Syria. And once again, a United States plot to use Sunni jihadists, although mostly the al-Nusra Front, to attack the Assad regime because Assad bought his weapons from Russia and not the United States, has failed. The United States, its CIA and State Department have long been involved in the overthrow of governments. And in the Middle East, it has always turned out poorly, with the removal of Saddam Hussein creating a far worse situation in Iraq, the removal of Gaddafi creating a vastly inferior situation in Libya, and now with the demise of Assad creating a horrific genocide in Syria. We have read the story that Yeshaya, the great prophet, painted in the 17th and 18th chapter of his prophetic portrait, and know that this horrific mass murder, Muslims killing Muslims, Muslim killing Christians in Syria, is going to end with the Muslims having no one to kill other than turning their attention on Jews. And this is particularly frightening for Israel, because one of the great miscalculations by the United States was that it thought that by having jihadists turn against the Assad regime, that it would make a better situation, not a worse situation, from Israel or for Israel, although that wasn't really part of their calculation. The calculation was simply warring with Russia and removing a Russian ally so that Syria would buy American weapons. But it assumed that with the Assad regime replaced, that there would be a chance of a military strike from Syria into Israel, not recognizing that the IDF has already shown that it can overwhelm any military attack on it, whether it is by Jordan, Syria, Iran, Egypt. The IDF is exceedingly effective at beating a military foe flying airplanes and driving tanks. What it is completely inept at is what we saw in 10/7, which is vast numbers of jihadists on motor scooters and on foot. It does not know how to respond. Still doesn't know how to respond. And so by replacing a government that would have wielded a military against Israel that was sure to be defeated, the United States malfeasance has turned Syria into a hive of warring jihadists, which Israel is ill-equipped to defend itself against. And the next 10/7 will be comprised of millions of murderous jihadists as opposed to a few thousand. Now, that is not to say that the United States is directly responsible for the apartheid and genocide taking place in Syria. Muslims are solely responsible for that. Muslims kill Muslims just as readily as they kill Jews. But the combination of these events and the rhetoric of Donald Trump, which is at times reassuring and times frightening. When he makes statements like Gaza is going to be turned into a resort and he's going to build emerald cities for the Gazans, for them to live in peace and free and in prosperity and the Sinai and in Jordan, when you recognize there is a 0% chance that's going to occur. And if it were to occur, it would actually be worse, not better, because they'd have unfettered access to weapons. You hear him say such things and you wonder, is he just trying to stir chaos? And then, he'll make statements which are clearly supportive of Israel against the militants. A second time doubling down and saying that there'll be all hell to pay if all of the hostages are not released. And yet the last time he said that, before the election, it was Israel that would have all hell to pay because they were forced to capitulate and trade thousands of demonic and demented terrorists for innocent hostages and dead bodies. The world is an exceedingly dangerous place. And to help resolve this, Yahweh, knowing that it would come, knowing that his people would still be estranged from him, knowing that there isn't a single, if you go back when we began, now 24 years ago, there wasn't a single Yehud that knew or used Yahweh's name. And he is the only source of their salvation. There wasn't one that recognized their Messiah or what he had achieved for them. No one acknowledged that he had fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim, or that Dod was the Son of God. Not a single Yehud knew the conditions of the covenant and how to participate in it. There were none that understood how the Moed Mikre, these invitations to the restoring witnesses, perform to provide the benefits of the covenant and how to capitalize upon them. It wasn't a single Yehud that knew what time it was and the overall plan, when the next harvest would transpire, when the homecoming would occur, who would be there. or that they were being invited back into Eden. And so with the world poised to destroy Israel and annihilate Jews, and with Jews unaware of everything that matters in their lives and being recalcitrant beyond compare, completely unwilling to even consider anything that God has to say to them, God came up with an ingenious plan. That plan is called the Choter. And the Choter is presented in the 11th chapter of Yeshayah. It is after 9.5 chapters of Yahweh denouncing his people over their propensity to be religious and political. And into this context, Yahweh presents the remedy. Now, this is an exceedingly unique solution from Yahweh, unlike anything in all of human history. There it is, presented right there in the midst of the great Isaiah scroll in the 11th chapter of Yeshayah, and yet not one person worldwide recognized what God was saying until now. Who would this Choter be? Why was Yahweh enabling him with 7 spirits, something that had heretofore never occurred before? Well, that's the story we're going to tell. So, coming to appreciate the implications of Yeshayah's presentation of the Choter is actually central to the survival of Yisrael and to the return of Yehudim. If I may be so bold, it is actually essential to the very survival of our planet. If God had not intervened in this way at this time, all life on earth would be extinguished. There's a lot riding on you recognizing who this man is and why he speaks for Almighty God on behalf of Israel and Yehudim, even for the benefit of every ethnicity on earth. This revelation is essential for the Choter to complete his mission against those that would harm his people. He must denounce political and religious belligerency and their assault against Israel, but also call God's people home at the same time. It is a job with dual purposes. So let's turn to it now. And as we do, we're going to pick up the narrative in context because it has a profound impact on our perceptions of the Choter. As it would transpire, this Choter is not only God's chosen implement to be parah, which means to be fruitful and productive, but also for saraf perorah, for lopping off the non-fruit-bearing branches with divided loyalties, thereby removing those who are seen as contemptible by God. The Choter is an instrument that Yahweh intends to maratze, wield with tremendous force against the opinionated and against the thoughtless, perhaps with the hope of shaking some sense into them before it's too late. This makes the Choter a tool which is being deployed to fell the political and religious elite, even shafel, humiliating those that he brings down to earth in the process. Therefore, in this context, it's hard to miss the stated implication that the Choter is ha-barzel, the hardened rod implement, an iron tool, and sharp axe, appointed to Nephal, to cut and cast down the Lebanon, the whitewashed ones who appear enlightened. That would be Satan and his minions. We read, behold, pay attention. Yahowah. Yahowah is the proper pronunciation of Yahweh's name as Eloah, God, as instructed in his Torah guidance regarding his Haya existence of the vast array of spiritual implements, Saba, the upright pillar of the tabernacle, Edom, the upright one. He will lop off the ambivalent and non-fruit-bearing shoots with divided loyalty, Saraf Parora, with tremendous force, Ba Metzarah, with a focus on completing the task. For there to be productivity back on the vine that is Israel, and the olive tree representing Yahudem, for the fields of barley and grain that are to be harvested. The weeds and the dead wood need to be pulled up and lopped off. It's time to do some pruning, some hoeing. And so this is what Yahweh is revealing, that he is going to lop off the ambivalent, non-fruit-bearing shoots with divided loyalty, and he's going to do so with tremendous force. And then the ones who have risen to the highest levels, those who have been lifted up and exalted, will be cut down. So that those in positions of power, as well as those who have an exalted view of themselves, the Gabora, will be brought down and humiliated, Shafal. You're going to be shamed. And then take us to the lowest possible place. This is Yeshaya, Isaiah 10:33. And this is providing the context for Yahweh's presentation of the Choter. So he will strike down the intertwined and twisted of the cultivated groves with the hardened iron rod and sharp cutting implement, Baha Barzel, with a divisive tool such as an axe. Then Lebanon, the white one appearing enlightened, will fall and be cast down by way of the mighty and majestic one. Yeshaya, Isaiah 10:34. For those who haven't spent a lot of time in the prophets, or who haven't had the opportunity to read my assessment of the non-prophet Ezekiel, what you may not know is that Yahweh uses Lebanon, as does the adversary himself, to describe the influence and the effect of the adversary. And so this Lebanon that is going to be struck down and cast down, the white one who appears enlightened, is the very God of religion. It's Hashem. It's Adonai. Jesus Christ. Allah. He is the one who, as the Lord, has positioned himself as a God in competition to Yahweh, using religion to babble, to intermix, and confound God's people. The mighty and majestic one can be one of two individuals. It is either a reference to the greatest man who ever lived, David, the returning king of Israel, or the mighty and majestic one, the Adir, is the awesome appearance of the beautiful and desirable one, which could also be a reference to Yahowah. Because either way, this man that Yahowah will soon, through Yahshua, identify as the Choter, is the corporeal manifestation today of the Spirit of Yahowah. And so he will be the empowering force to conduct spiritual warfare against Hasatan. And in the process, the intertwined and twisted, entangled thicket that is choking out the life of God's people and precluding them from seeing the ground beneath that would otherwise have been receptive to growing a fertile crop of olives or grapes or grain, will now be exposed because of this collaborative effort. Therefore, considering the context of this narrative, we find that the Choter is being deployed to forcefully lop off the unproductive branches with divided loyalties while shaking some sense into the opinionated and thoughtless. And that makes this man the tool deployed to fell and humiliate the political and religious establishment. The Choter is a hardened rod, a sharp axe, wielded by God to cut down the impediments to growth so the tree of lives can be productive again. There will be a lopping away for there to be new growth, pruning, as every one who has ever tried to promote growth within a garden recognizes is essential. So in this context, we read, a Choter, a rod to purge and punish wrongdoing, as well as a shoot from a branch and a sucker from a stump or root, will be productive and fruitful. An individual, a Choter, used as a stick to fill the guilty, an implement to chastise the misleading, a stem or secondary branch, designed as an instrument to promote growth, while serving as a living entity delivering progeny, will be actively extended for a period of time by means of the stalk, the original stump, even the root from which new growth can emerge, of Yishai, so as to stand out and be noticed, drawing attention to the substance of existence. As an observant branch, a secondary stem or shoot, which extends from the primary limb, a netzar, to be one who is observant, one who preserves by looking after, focusing on, and protecting. By means of his roots, which keep him anchored and steadfast, even nourished, such that he will continually bear an abundance of fruit, being productive while encouraging productivity in others. Parah. He is going to be a fruitful bowl, causing and enabling prosperity on behalf of successive generations. Powerful conclusion of Yeshaya 11:1. With this introduction from the conclusion of the 10th chapter of Yeshaya, we see the Choter both as a weapon and as an olive branch, a conduit for new life that the cudgel has been used to lop off the dead and decaying wood. He is the rod and axe Yahweh will deploy to cut down and punish his religious and political adversaries. At the same time, he is the shoot from the tree of knowledge and the sucker that will bring the fallen stump of Israel back to life. Make no mistake, the Choter is being presented as masculine singular. There is only one of him, and he is being deployed by God himself for this specific purpose. This may be the single most important pronouncement for our time. The verb yatsa used in this statement reveals that the Choter is being extended and actively deployed to draw Yehudim out of the religious and political corruptions of this world and unto God. He is conducting a second and final yatsa, an exodus from Mitzrayim, the crucibles of human oppression, out of Babel, the place where religion and politics were intermixed to confuse and mislead. Well, just as Moshe led the initial yatsa. Israel has fallen. God's people have ceased being productive members of the covenant family. To resolve this problem before it results in fruitless harvest, particularly during Shabuah, which is upcoming, followed by Towrah, the day of the herald. Yahweh is using this Choter to give the fallen stump of Yisrael new life. The roots will be productive again. And through bold prophecies like this, the Choter is sure to yeshe, stand out and be noticed. And therefore, he's going to be related to Dod. God has decided to yeshe, to draw attention to his existence, just as he did his beloved son. Yada may have wanted to remain anonymous, but Yahweh clearly has other plans, and Yahweh's choices prevail over man's. In addition to serving as a pruning axe to rid the world of invasive species and rotten branches, and more than the rod of divine punishment, the Choter is presented as a netzir. He is an observant branch. This means that he is a secondary stem extending from the primary limb to absorb as much light from the sun as possible. Further, since netzir is from natsar, to observe, to watch over, to preserve, to closely look after, to focus on and protect, it's very similar to the title nakar, observant foreigner, which Dod's son Solomon used when telling his people prophetically that in the last day there would be a Nakri to whom they should listen to return back home. Yahweh's Choter is deeply sheresh. He's rooted, such that he is properly anchored, he is nourished, fruitful, and steadfastly productive. Israel can be assured that he will never be pushed aside or blown away. He is firmly established for the duration of this mission. Now, with all of this known, Yeshaya very cleverly and subtly concluded this initial descriptive assessment by calling the Choter Parah. He is a productive and fruitful bull. This is the same thing that Yeshaya will say of this same man, calling the final Zeroah, the one cultivating the seeds of the harvest, Parah. 6 chapters hence. when depicting his rule during Shabuah and also during Towrah in Isaiah 17. There it is used to convey that the Adamah Parah, this bloody red man of the earth, will be especially productive and serve as a sacrificial bull on Yom Teruah, which is the day of the herald. And by doing so, the great prophet was introducing us to the man from Edom, who in red attire saves many in the end, making it obvious that the man who wrote the textbook on proper chotering knew that he would equate the Adamah Parah with the Zeroah, also in the 63rd chapter of Yashayah, which is something we will review as we continue to progress in our understanding of the mission and the person that Yahweh has enabled. As a result of these references, we can clearly see that Yahweh's Choter, well, he's a rod to purge and punish wrongdoing, as well as a shoot from the branch and sucker from a stump or root, which will continually bear an abundance of fruit by being observant and being productive, by being responsive, encouraging productivity in others. Now, what God says next is said nowhere else in the entirety of the Torah and prophets. This mission means a great deal to the Almighty, and therefore to his people at this time. This is because the Spirit, the Ruach, the divine power, influence, and energy of Yahweh will settle and will remain on him. Nuach al-Hu, placed on him. She energizes and restores him. She is in alliance with him, dwelling and residing within him, enriching the association to assure the most favorable outcome. Well, the Spirit of Yahweh would be sufficient and in and of itself. The Spirit of Yahweh is what enabled Moshe. The Spirit of Yahweh is what empowered Doe to be such a great prophet, Messiah, Savior, and King. But there's more in this case. And you can say there's more in this case because the pickings were slim. That by the time we reached the end, mankind had degraded to the point that the best Yahweh could find would need 7 times more than was previously required to accomplish the mission. Or you could assume that, well, it's not humankind that has degraded, but Yahweh's people have distanced themselves from him to such an extent over the past 3,000 years that it would take nigh on a miracle to gain their attention again. That one man, even with the Spirit of Yahweh, would be insufficient. That Yehudim and Yisrael had gone so far away from Yahweh, erasing his name and negating everything he achieved through his beloved Son and our Messiah, Dod, and had done so for such a long time and such bitterness and rancor. It would take really everything God and man could throw at it to knock some sense into God's wayward and irascible people. The third option, of course, as we proceed in this and recognizing this unprecedented level of support for the Choter, is to realize how much is riding on the success of what he achieves in collaboration with Yahweh. And it is actually quite astounding. Had Yahowah not empowered the Choter in this way, and had he not been receptive and performed as requested, there would be no Shabuah harvest, no Teruah gleaning, no homecoming on Yom Kippurim, no return to the garden on Sukkah. And if Yahowah and his son Dod did not return to the planet, all life would be extinguished, and Satan will have prevailed. This is what's at stake. And should you think that is hyperbole, then I would ask you to please consider the fact that from the time of Dod to now, other than a handful of prophets, the last of them 2,500 years ago, there isn't a single Yahud that knew or spoke Yahweh's name. There wasn't a single Yahud that recognized what Dod, as the Messiah and Son of God, had achieved on Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. There was not a single Yahud that could articulate the conditions to participate in the covenant. Not one Yahud knew how to capitalize on the Moed Mikre, these invitations to the restoring witnesses. There wasn't a single Yahud that knew what time it was, and when the final 4 Moed Mikre would be fulfilled, or how to benefit from them. If it were not from what we have achieved over these past nearly 24 years and what we will achieve in the 8 years that remain, life would have been extinguished on our planet, and the remaining prophecies of Yahowah would have gone unfulfilled. So God is equipping his Choter with some exceptional characteristics. In addition to the Ruach of Yahowah that will settle and remain upon him, we read that the Spirit, the Ruach, providing the capacity to comprehend and then teach, will contribute to. That is Chokmah. Chokmah is the mental aptitude and wisdom to learn and then instruct, to grasp the essence of the issue, and to communicate reasoned conclusions and valid perceptions intelligently, wisely providing the technical expertise to be discerning and then to educate. The Ruach of Chokmah, while enabling understanding by making the proper connections to reveal insights. The Ruach of Benah. Benah means to facilitate the propensity to ponder the process of information, to process this information in such a way that the individual is especially discerning and discriminating and judgmental, and therefore can make intelligent associations which lead to a conceptual comprehension, revealing how to respond after thoughtful consideration. Bien is the very personification of intelligence. It speaks of making the connections between things to find the patterns and the common denominators, which leads to enlightenment. The Spirit, the Ruach of advice and counsel regarding the overall purpose of the complete plan. Etzah, essential and pertinent directions regarding how to properly respond, providing prudent consultation on the entire purpose and total proposal, delivering effective mentoring on how to deliberate the most important of all decisions. And the ruach of being emboldened and inspiring, powerful and strong, awe-inspiring, even victorious, exceedingly competent, and courageous. At a time, these things are all required. YAHOWAH. On how to be a poised and assured leader who is empowering, able to accomplish the mission and perform until it is complete, providing the aptitude and capability to confirm what is true, offering the mental discipline to be unwavering, championing the cause with integrity and character, always fighting to defend what is right fearlessly and with valor. From God's perspective, to be heroic, valiant. This is a fighter, a man who will never flee from the battle. The spirit, the ruach, of knowing and of knowledge, of being perceptive and discerning by learning, dayath, of recognizing where to look for answers and acquiring information, of being aware of the evidence, of even where to find the proper evidence to search, and being able to differentiate what is relevant and accurate, discerning between fact and fiction, right and wrong, so as to recognize and acknowledge the truth from the lie. Dayath is from Yada, which means to learn and to know, to recognize and acknowledge, to consider and comprehend, to become acquainted and personally familiar, as well as to respect and revere, Yirah, to appreciate the awesome nature and outstanding character, the superlative ability and the astonishing greatness, so as to be inspired by Yahowah. Yashayah. Yahweh delivers. 11:2. Nothing else like this. Not in the totality of the Torah, the Nabi, prophets, and the Mizmor Psalms, not even in the writings. This is the most profoundly important statement Yahweh has ever made regarding a particular individual at a certain time. You see, part of the fuss is that there's no time left. This is it. I am your last best hope. He'll either capitalize on what Yahweh has arranged to convey through me, or there are no more tomorrows. We are just 14 months away from the Shabuah harvest, and less than 8.5 years from Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukkah. And then it's all over. And it's not like you're going to have many opportunities between now and then, because we're very quickly approaching the time of Jacob's troubles, this 7-year period of horrors perpetrated around the world, and particularly abysmal attacks, horrendous attacks on God's people. just trying to survive is going to be job enough. And so you have really the next 14 months to pay attention and respond before all hell breaks loose. So the Choter is the first and the only person in human history to receive the 7 spirits of Yahowah. And from this realization and the accompanying infusions of intellectual prowess, understanding, counsel, courage, competency, knowledge, and perceptiveness, particularly in association with developing a reverence and respect for Yahowah, well, this is a powerful package for an overwhelmingly important time than purpose. Now, if we were to put all of this together, Yahowah's implement is quite remarkable. The Choter is a rod to purge and punish wrongdoing, as well as a shoot from a branch and a sucker from the stump to be fruitful and productive. He will be actively extended for a period of time from the fallen tree and rootstock to stand out and to be noticed as an observant branch by means of him being deeply rooted such that he is anchored and steadfast. Deeply rooted, yes, indeed, and nourished. Able to continually bear an abundance of fruit, being productive while encouraging productivity in others, even as a productive bull. This is because the Spirit and the divine power, the knowledge and influence of Yahowah has settled and will remain on him. Align with him and energizing him, enriching and enabling him, empowering him. The spirit of providing the capacity to comprehend and then teach of wisdom, and the mental aptitude to learn and then effectively instruct, to grasp the essence of the issues and communicate reasoned conclusions and perceptions logically, judiciously, providing the technical expertise to be discerning and to educate while enabling understanding by making the proper connections to reveal insights, facilitating the propensity to ponder and process information by being perceptive and discriminating, even judgmental, making intelligent associations which lead to a conceptual comprehension, becoming the very personification of intelligence. The spirit of advice and counsel regarding the overall purpose of the entire plan, cognizant of the pertinent directions regarding how to properly respond, providing prudent consultation on the purpose of the proposal, delivering mentoring on how to deliberate relevant decisions, and of being enormously emboldened and inspiring, a powerful and strong voice, awesomely victorious, exceedingly competent, and courageous, being a poised and assured leader who is empowering, able to accomplish the mission and perform until it is complete, providing the aptitude and capability to confirm what is true, offering the mental discipline to be unwavering, and championing the cause with integrity and character, always fighting to defend that which is right, fearlessly, with valor and heroism. The spirit of knowing and of knowledge, being perceptive and discerning by learning, recognizing where to look for answers, and acquiring the information such that he becomes aware of the evidence and is able to differentiate what is relevant and accurate, discerning fact from fiction, right from wrong, recognizing and acknowledging the truth as Yada, so as to respect and revere, appreciate, and be inspired by Yahowah. Well, one does not need to speculate to determine that Yahowah prepared this man, his Choter, for one of the most essential missions in human history, or that God was assuring that this collaboration would succeed by being wise and judicious, insightful and cogent, intelligent and effective, bold and steadfast, poised and assured, disciplined and unwavering. This man will learn the answer, and then he's going to share it. And beyond all else, he will love and respect Yahowah above all names, reintroducing Yahweh's name to his people, being sure that they know it. As a result of this, God affirms that his Choter will respond when called, and his profound respect for Yahweh's name will be paramount, motivating him to reintroduce Yehudim to the very God whose name they have erased. Additionally, by accepting the offer and responding appropriately, he's going to be perceptive, Rayach, you. His acceptance and perceptiveness, his nose for the truth, his willingness to respond and supply answers after his virtual meeting will be pleasing, bringing him exceedingly close with regard to developing a profound admiration and respect for Yahowah. All of these books, all of them behind me, this entire library, as we broadcast the Yahowah blog from this library studio, and all of the books at YADAYAH.com, all freely offered to you. 20,000 plus pages of material, 35 volumes, all free, and all written under the name Yada Yahowah. To know Yahowah, to be familiar with Yahowah, to acknowledge Yahowah. It is the core of our mission, because it is only when Yah's people come to respect him and his name again, and they incorporate his name into their lives and stop erasing it, that there will be any hope for this final remnant. The first step to knowing God is to acknowledge his name. And his name is Yahowah, something that Yahowah enabled me to recognize and prove, then share over 20 years ago. I was the first to present the correct pronunciation and the proper importance of Yahweh's name to the world in 2,500 years. I don't suppose that's a coincidence. Therefore, it will not be by an appearance or by a vision. Lo la marea. And it will not be through the visual form which can be seen, or any kind of spiritual revelation or miraculous vision or supernatural phenomenon. Isn't that amazing? After imbuing the Choter with an unprecedented support from the seven spirits, Yahowah said, no, it's not going to be by way of a spiritual revelation or a visual seen, a supernatural phenomenon, seen with his eyes, that he is going to decide, that he will confront the evidence as a discerning judge and make decisions. No, that's not going to be the way. Also, it will not be by hearsay, not by rumors or innuendo, not by word of mouth or that which is passed around person to person, nor by listening to information which cannot be verified, which wouldn't even be admissible in any court of law. It's from my to question and Shama listening, heard with his ear, that he will make judgments or prove his arguments, that he will offer advice or resolve disputes, that he will make decisions regarding vindication or hurl his accusations, even chide those who disprove. Nor will he use this approach to determine who and what is right in any debate. Yeshaya 11:3. Well, prophets are either afforded visions or future events, so they can't perceive what's going to happen, or they listen to and report the words God shares with them verbatim, such that they are always accurate and reliable. False prophets, however, are provocateurs of hearsay. The Choter, by contrast, will be distinguished by an entirely different approach. With the benefit of the Ruach spirit of Yahowah settling upon him, he will use spiritual chokmah, intelligence, giving him the capacity to comprehend what all others have missed. Yahowah will expressly enable him to make the appropriate connections that none have seen before, to understand God's testimony. Therefore, he will share a plethora of profound and previously unheralded insights, thousands of them. And because his conclusions will all be deduced from the Torah and prophets, his witness will be readily validated and easily proven. It was ingenious by Yahowah. There wasn't any time left to validate his witness should he have been a prophet, someone who could have foreseen what was going to occur, write it down, and then when it occurred, it would prove him right. Well, by the time that these things are occurring, it's too late. So there's no purpose of having a prophet. It wouldn't accomplish anything. But should Yahowah be able to equip this unique man as his Choter, to give new life to the falling stump that was Yisrael, such that he could deduce from what the prophets had written, which had already been proven valid, and to use their testimony to draw reasoned conclusions which lead to understanding, which then equip his people to respond appropriately to him, then it's all there. Absolute proof that what he is saying comes from God, and no way to argue with it. Total validation and complete understanding. It was ingenious. An entirely different approach for an entirely different time. That's good news, and it's, well, good news, but in a very different way. The job was relatively easy for God's prophets, not for two of them. The two prior Zeroah had a tough go of it. Israel's tough to lead, Moshe and Dod. But the other prophets, their responsibility was to listen to what God said and convey it. How do you go wrong? God says, this is what's going to happen, and you say, this is what's going to happen. That wouldn't be the way it's going to work with the Choter. Oh, the Choter would have to use Chakma and Bana and Dayat. The Choter was going to have to be discriminating, discerning, judgmental. He was going to have to apply a very disciplined approach to learning. He was going to have to study the Torah and prophets as never before. With an open mind, he would have to look at what the words God said actually mean, examining them from the oldest possible extant sources, such as the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then scrubbing them of the Masoretic diacritical marks to look at what the letters themselves convey, applying the original moods and stems and conjugations, such that he would know the nuances that are being conveyed through each of these words, and doing so in a way that had never happened before. There's lots of people that say, this happened to so-and-so, and so-and-so said this, and therefore this was the result. That's not what Chakma and Bien enable. What Chakma and Ben enable is that this man would uniquely be able to look at the totality of the fabric that Yahweh has woven together with these threads comprised of his words, and to put the frame of the overall picture that God is painting for us in the proper place, such that all of the hues and colors that God has conveyed are not only properly presented, but they're all appropriately connected, so that you would understand the connection between the Bareth and the Mikre, between Dod and Pesach and Matzah, as well as Bikurim, between the benefits of the covenant and the means to receive them, between the dress rehearsals and harbingers of things like Pesach, Matzah, Bikurim, and Shabuah, and the fulfillment of these events, such that you could look at what happened in the past to explain what's going to happen in the future. Insights, of which there are many thousands, many of which are really profound, life-altering, transforming, are presented in these books behind me and on the shelf at YadaYah.com, and as part of this YAHOWAH blog. Thousands of them, which are unheralded, meaning no one has ever conceived them or shared them previously, all of which were deduced this exact same way. Now, the reason that's good is because it's based upon logic. It's based upon being on evidence and reason, things that God values. And that because it's based upon evidence and reason, you can do as I have done, which is eliminate faith. I don't believe, I know. It's a much more powerful position. And then you can take knowledge and expand it into the single most powerful force in the universe, understanding. This is the result of this process. It is the gift that Yahweh and I are giving you. It's why the books are so long. It's why these shows go on and on. There's a lot to learn, a lot of connections to be made, a great deal to share. Because we want you to go from being unaware to knowing, and from knowing to understanding. And even then, the single biggest obstacle to that is clearing away all of the religious muck of Judaism, of Christianity, and of Islam, so that you're in a position to actually perceive the truth, to see it clearly. uncluttered by all of the lies. A very different approach, but with a very powerful benefit. And I want to tell you that what we're doing together in this process does not end with the Shabuah harvest or the Towrah gleaning or with the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah or of the homecoming of Dod and Yahowah or of the return to the garden. When Yahowah inscribes his Torah inside of his children, of the covenant family, it will be our job to help elucidate it, to explain it, to make it pertinent in people's lives forevermore. And besides that, we as part of the inheritance we're receiving through the covenant are being given the entire universe to explore. And doing so is going to require a great deal of understanding and judgment and both opportunity and restraint as we go out and conceive life and return to share our experiences. And in doing so, with the wide variety and unique nature of every covenant member, there is going to be a supreme leader, Dod. And leaders do not effectively manage and shepherd such a large flock alone. And so the Choter and those associated with him will be engaged for a very long time, helping more people, even when we're back in the garden, appreciate all that God has in store for us. So for the first time in thousands of years, and as a result of the Ruach of Etzah, Yahweh is going to reveal his entire plan from beginning to end, from the garden to our return to Eden, which once again, the very first time that has been presented as the process of the past 6,000 years was in these books and part of the YAHOWAH blog. The reason we learned so much about Eden is that God is bringing us back. That is what Sukkah represents, camping out with God and a planet restored, where the conditions that were experienced in Eden are returned to the earth. So we're not only telling God's complete plan and story from beginning to end, we're providing all of the pertinent details and directions along the way, and also in the nick of time, such that this will make it possible for the prudent to deliberate and decide how to respond to all Yahweh is offering before it is too late. And since this message will be contrary to what his people have been led to believe, in fact, what the whole world has thought to be true. Boy, do I ever see that on X. I mean, I am supported by covenant members, but overall, man, it is one man against the world. The Choter, therefore, must be as Dod was, Gabora, as Dod is, as Dod will always be, empowered, making him exceptionally capable and courageous. Second only to Dod himself, as God presents Dod as Gabriel, God's most courageous and capable man. As such, my friends, it would be highly unwise to quarrel with him. Obviously, this is an unprecedented situation and previously unheralded individual. So there is much more said about the Choter. Yahweh wants his people. He needs his people to recognize him and to benefit from what his seven spirits communicate through him. So still addressing his chosen implement, Yahweh reveals that this man will be exceedingly judgmental. He will be accurate and forthright, especially regarding opening the door to understanding. He will be logical and advancing sound arguments, conveying the truth right out in the open for all to see. In a world dominated by the duplicitous and irrational, he's going to be the lone exception, making his arrival obvious for those whose eyes are open. He will exercise good judgment, Shabat. He will decide, judging and adjudicating the matter, arguing to resolve the disputes. And do not think for a second that Shaphat was just loosely tossed in here. You know what Shaphat means? He's going to judge. Remember how Yahweh led into this that said that he's going to be the rod of divine punishment? This job entails far more than what I had previously recognized, certainly more than I signed up to be responsible for. But the Choter is the one through whom God delegates judgment. And you might say, oh, no, come on, it cannot be. God's the ultimate judge. God doesn't do anything alone. Anything that he can do through one of his chosen implements, he does. Yahweh didn't go into Mitzrayim alone. Certainly he was capable, but it's not the way he works. He chose Moshe. God could have unified Israel, protected it from the pesky Philistines, could have revealed wonderful songs for us to sing, but he didn't do it alone. He did it through his beloved son, Dod. When it came to fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, well, I'm sure that God could have devised some plan to make it possible, although it really would be awkward. Yahweh and Dod recognized that if they did it together, it would be so much better. And it was, and it is. This is how God likes to work. He is now telling you that when it matters most, he is not going to release his spirit on humanity at large until the very, very end, instantly before his return. But prior to that, he is going to pour out his seven spirits on a single individual because he's going to work through him, just as he has in the past, as he will in the future. And this man is the man through whom he's going to execute judgment, both beneficial and, well, not so much so. I don't really kid around, but I say on X quite often that when somebody says something that is exceptionally hostile to human interest and particularly to God's people, and people are lashing out against him, I said, not to worry. I have confirmed his reservation in hell. It's true. Don't let me confirm yours. I also, as the judge, have been granted the authority to reward. No. I am mandated to act within the authority of Yahweh. And when acting in the authority of Yahweh, I will do as Yahweh wants. That's my whole life. I tell you what Yahweh wants me to tell you. I think as he wants me to think. I will act as he wants me to act. I'm not going rogue, although I'm rogue among men. So there's nothing I'm going to do that will be counter to what God would do. It's just that he's going to implement judgment through his Choter, and that would be me. So he will be the judge and exercise good judgment at the same time. By seeking to be accurate, honest, and forthright, Tzedek. As I said, even though Yahweh has chosen to exercise judgment through the Choter, and the Choter is rogue among men, he is not rogue with God. He takes his responsibility very seriously. Heck, I'm 70 years old and I work 95 hours a week at this. I have worked 95 hours a week at this now for 23 and a half years. I, more than anyone in our time, have worked to be right, to be accurate, to be honest and forthright, to be fair and correct, in accord with Yahweh's will, his intent, his message, his words, his decisions, his overall plan. I've sought to avoid any inconsistency or conflict with the standard that Yahweh has set. And this is particularly true with regard to opening the doorway for discernment, Dal, with advice on providing the way for a few, with spoken words to disclose the entrance on behalf of the unpretentious and socially disenfranchised from Dala, to draw conclusions and thus be discerning. Do you know who opened the door to life? Who opened the door to Yahweh's home? It wasn't me. It was my king. Dode. Dode opened the door to life on Passover. And I'm the first to be right about what he volunteered to do on our behalf and to share it with you. Yes, I'm the first in human history, since Dode himself discussed it with Yahweh, to tell you that Dode is not only the Messiah and Son of God, not only the former but returning king of Israel, but that in his second of 3 lives, Dode fulfilled Passover, matzah, and unyeasted bread, opening the doorway to life, taking our guilt on his soul into Sheol to deposit it there, never to be seen again, thereby perfecting us so that we could follow him as Bakurim, firstborn children, adopted into the covenant family, inheriting all that God has to offer, being enriched and empowered by him, so that we are prepared to take the journey of a lifetime on Shabuah and be enriched again as we leave the constraints of the physical and material world and enter the 7th dimension as energy-based beings comprised of light. No one, not in 3,000 years, has understood this or shared it with you. The most important discovery in human history. Dode, David, the Son of God, and our Messiah, the returning King, opened the doorway to life. It goes on. It says, he will provide proof using sound arguments. Yakach. He will use evidence and reason to decide, to judge, and to correct, to engage in dialogue, to resolve disputes while also being critical, accusing and condemning, making the case to either vindicate or convict. With everything out in the open and doing so fairly. On behalf of the sincere and responsive who are seeking straightforward answers, Anah, who reply, of the earth, Eretz. Yeshayah, salvation is from Yahowah. Isaiah 11:4, and this is only in part. At a time when being judgmental is harshly criticized and accuracy is no longer a justification for telling the truth, when discernment isn't respected and being discriminating is no longer vogue, Yahowah's Choter will be unlike any other. And among the many attributes that set him apart will be his willingness to be confrontational, verbally chastising and incapacitating the religious and political who have led so many astray. All the while providing the evidence and proof using sound arguments to make his case on behalf of Yahowah and his people as well as his son. That is why there are 20,000 pages of books sitting behind me. That is why I have been doing this for nearly 24 years before speaking to you. I am now the reservoir of all of the information and understanding that I have gleaned over that time. And it is at this time that Yahowah said, we've written enough books. One more book isn't going to make much difference. Not after all that you have written. But what will make a difference is you speaking directly to my people. And that was the birth of the YAHOWAH blog. Now, just 2 months ago, that we began this process. And throughout it all, we have endeavored to provide the proof that our arguments are sound regarding Yahowah's name, regarding the achievements of his beloved son, regarding the Bereth covenant and the Mikre that deliver on those promises. We're here to reintroduce you, Yisrael, to the God whose name you erased, to the Son you disowned, and to bring you back home. You know, in a very real way, while this sets the, Choter up as somebody who is, special in the sense that he has been called by God to provide the most important mission of our time, to serve in this way. I really am nothing but your servant. And when you really get down to it, that's no different than was Moshe and Dode before me. We're here to serve you. But that service is not always pleasant. And that is because, well, Yisrael, you haven't always been pleasant. So this says, in addition, he will strike, verbally attacking and disabling, nakah. He will confront, crippling and incapacitating, sarcastically mocking, chastising and judging, while pointing out the irony of it all to ravage and defeat those living within the material realm with the rod and with the staff of his mouth and thus his voice. Remember when we began this and the end of the 10th chapter of Yada Yahowah, and we learned that the Choter was not just a stem off the main branch and a sucker from the original fallen stump that would bring forth new life, but he was also an axe to chop away the dead wood. And he was an iron rod through whom God would execute divine judgment. God doesn't want you to miss that point. In addition, the Choter, he will strike, verbally attacking and disabling, confronting, crippling, and incapacitating, sarcastically mocking, chastising, and judging, pointing out the irony of it all to ravage and defeat those living in the material realm, using the rod and the staff, Shabat, on behalf of the nations and tribes with the implement of his mouth and thus his voice. That wasn't true until Yahweh asked me to not change what we had to say, but how we said it. To go from his and my love affair with the written word to the passion and emotion of the spoken word, to the ability to reach more people in a way that more are likely to listen and respond. And so the tool that is being wielded by Yahweh is my mouth. This is not unique for Yahweh. Do you recall what he said to Moshe? When Moshe said, "I don't speak from, don't pick, well, you pick a wrong guy." Something to that order. Might have been a paraphrase. What did Yahweh tell him? Who made your mouth? Don't you think I'm able to use it? And that's why when he speaks of Moshe, he said, the unique thing about Moshe, this is when Miriam, who was embittered and wanted to claim that she also spoke for God. Yahweh said, the difference is with Moshe, I speak mouth to mouth. Mouth to mouth means that Yahweh spoke through Moshe. He did exactly as he told Moshe he was going to do. He spoke through him. The voice of Yahweh came through Moshe. When the children of Israel said, we never want to hear directly from God again, we never want to see him again, God says, okay, no problem. He spoke through Moshe, and then through Daud, and through his prophets, and now through me. Yahweh, particularly in Yada Yahowah, this textbook on proper chotering, explains that the choter is the call voice of Yahweh at this time for God's people. Think about the consequence of that mistake 3,400 years ago, when you, as the children of Israel, told the creator God of the universe, who had just saved your sweet ass from being slaves and enduring genocide in what was apartheid, Egypt. And you told them, I don't want ever to hear directly from you again. Well, guess what? You got me. So now I'm the call of Yahweh. Because the choter is going to strike and verbally attack. He is going to disable, confront, cripple, and incapacitate, sarcastically mocking the political and the religious, those who are misleading Yisrael with the rod and the staff of his mouth and thus his voice. That's an interesting word, Shabat, because it has so many implications. It speaks on behalf of the nation and the tribes of Yisrael. It speaks of the staff of a shepherd that protects and guides and walks with the sheep. And it speaks of the rod which is used to execute divine punishment, to beat some sense into people. It continues with, and this will be our concluding comment on this introductory program on the Choter. And with the spirit, the ruach of his lips and resulting language, he will devastate the Rasha, the wicked and wrong, the godless, those whose thoughts, words, and deeds are criminal and evil, those deserving condemnation for violating the standard, the guilty of creating disunity and disharmony. This is translated from 1Q ISA, the great Isaiah scroll. Yashayah, salvation is from Yahweh, Isaiah 11:4. The inclusion of Shabat rod and staff of his mouth reaffirms what we discovered about the Choter when considering the 10th chapter of Yashayah. He is going to be unlike anyone since the great prophet Isaiah himself, equal parts condemning and commending, excoriate the religious and political while attesting to Yahweh's alternative. He is both rod and staff to purge and punish wrongdoing and to be productive and fruitful, leading Yahweh's flock home, providing vibrant new life for the stump of Yisrael. Yes, the Choter will be like the prophets in this way. Every one of them, including Moshe, spent an equal amount of time chastising, condemning, excoriating the people's propensity to be religious and political, because these things preclude an association with God, while at the same time sharing Yahweh's approach through the Torah, the Berith covenant. Torah means teaching and guidance. The Berith covenant, which is the family relationship agreement, implemented through the Moed Mikre, these invitations to participate in the restoring witness, to meet with God, as enabled directly by Yahweh's firstborn, his Bakor, Dod, our Masayak and Melech king, Messiah. These things he will share with the rod and staff of his mouth, and it is the very spirit of Yahweh whose message will proceed from his lips and resulting language as he devastates the wicked and the wrong, eliminating them. Yeah, he is used both sides here. That will be profoundly important when he returns to speak alongside Elia from the Temple Mount. And by the way, we're going to get to the point where the statement that I have made many times that the Temple Mount will be cleansed of the hideous boil and gory scar that currently sit atop it and the Dome of the Rock and Alaska Mosque. They will assuredly be gone. But when we're there, we'll spend as much time sharing the truth about how to participate in the covenant and capitalize upon the Moed Mikre and come to know and embrace Yahweh and his beloved son Dod, as we will spend excoriating the detrimental consequence of religion and politics. It's, I know, difficult for many listening who are Yehudim to process, but the greatest impediment to them knowing God now is not Christianity or Islam. It's Judaism. And so we will speak out against the rabbis. We will condemn them for the benefit of the covenant family. So I thank you for listening. I look forward to presenting the second installment of this series on the Choter. I have translated and commented on well over 100 pages in my preparation for this. We are really just beginning the process. I don't have my page numbers here before me, but I think we're probably 5 or 6 pages into what will be an extraordinary voyage into this time and mission and all that God wants his people to know so that they can come to know him again and live forever as part of his family. So thank you for listening and being part of the YAHOWAH blog. I am your host, the Choter, Craig Winn.